Why is there so much anxiety these days? If you've ever struggled with anxiety, then it won't have escaped your attention that there seems to be more and more people lately being diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, or just struggling with anxiety in general. So why is this happening? Has the world changed, or have we changed? In this video, I'm going to explain the three main reasons we're currently seeing an upturn in the amount of people suffering with anxiety issues, and what you as an individual can do to lower your own anxiety. Let's start by saying that everything I'm going to tell you today is based on my own observations from working for more than a decade as an anxiety therapist, seeing clients one-to-one, day in, day out. If what I talk about today resonates with you, then please remember to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more content from me. And if you disagree, then be sure to let me know your own thoughts in the comments below. Okay, so let's start with the first and perhaps most obvious reason we're living on an increasingly anxious planet. It's no secret that social media plays a significant role in our lives. Whilst it has its benefits, too much exposure to social media can wreak havoc on our mental well-being. And with constant access to everyone else's lives and thoughts comes the temptation to fall into the comparison trap. We see the very best, heavily filtered, curated parts of others' lives and compare them to our own unfiltered mistakes and missteps. This inevitably leads to feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and heightened anxiety levels. The pressure to measure up to unrealistic standards set by social media can lead us down a very dark road, believing we'll never be good enough because we don't quite ever seem to measure up to that seemingly perfect standard we see on our screens. But beyond the pressure to keep up with the Kardashians, there's another more insidious and deliberately engineered effect of living our life on social media. Our social media apps are designed to make sure we stay on their platform, constantly bombarding us with more and more information, desperately trying to trigger the little hits of dopamine our brain is addicted to. This constant and irresistible flood of information can ultimately lead to overwhelm. As we scroll through our feed, blitzed with updates on friends' holidays, promotions, and achievements, while simultaneously being inundated with news headlines, viral videos, and trending topics, we're inevitably swamped with too much information to comfortably process, especially when it's the content that sparks outrage or upset that gets prioritized by the algorithm. Social media wants to spark an emotional reaction in you, and when this is nearly constant, it is inevitably draining, and when our resources are depleted, our anxiety increases. Also, the addictive nature of social media keeping us glued to our screens is consequently preventing us from engaging in activities that promote mental well-being, such as exercise, hobbies, or spending time with loved ones. That's why the primary reason so many of us are struggling with our anxiety levels is the internet keeping us locked in a cycle of comparison, overwhelm, and discontent. But this doesn't mean that those unusual individuals who don't have any social media don't experience anxiety. It'd be way too reductive to suggest smartphones are the source of all of our issues. So, what else? In recent years, there's been a significant increase in public awareness surrounding mental health issues, especially anxiety disorders. While this heightened awareness has led to important conversations and reduced stigma, it's also had an unintended negative effect. Many of us now have a greater awareness of anxiety symptoms and disorders, but this can sometimes lead to misinterpretation and cause us to overanalyze the way we feel. 30 years ago, when my own social anxiety was at its height, I didn't even know what the word anxiety meant. Nobody ever used it. We might say we were feeling nervous or worried, but the term anxiety disorder just wasn't out there in the public consciousness in the way it is now. And I genuinely think this played a huge positive factor in allowing me to get past my anxiety struggles. If I was going through it now, I would absolutely get diagnosed with social anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder, and I would then start treating anxious feelings as signs of my ongoing condition. This in itself would inevitably lead to heightened anxiety about my situation and state of mind. I'd start analysing and over-analysing every uncomfortable thought or feeling, which would simply exacerbate the problem. The fact I never reached the point of thinking my social anxiety was anything other than a personal struggle that I was trying to overcome means I never pathologised my feelings and turned them into something beyond what they needed to be. These days, normal feelings of stress or nervousness are often mistaken for signs of an anxiety disorder, leading to unnecessary worry and self-diagnosis. This creates the phenomenon which is at the heart of the problem for most of the anxiety clients I see, the second fear, the anxiety about anxiety. This is what causes high anxiety to stick around and exacerbate anxiety sensations, creating a cycle of fear and apprehension. Check out my video about the anxiety feedback loop for a full breakdown on this. I'll link to it in the description below. Lastly, let's talk about the evolving landscape of mental health classification. Over the years, the criteria for diagnosing anxiety disorders have become broader, leading to more people receiving diagnoses. While this may seem like progress in identifying and treating those in need, it also has unintended negative consequences. The lower threshold for diagnosis means that individuals with milder symptoms or anxiety caused by very specific situations or circumstances may be labelled with a disorder. Even worse, this might then be perceived as some kind of permanent state that can't be overcome and that we are now simply burdened with trying to manage throughout our life. As we've already spoken about, being labelled with some kind of mental disorder simply amplifies our worries and contributes to some sense of being mentally unwell. Pile on top of this the propensity to self-diagnose via Google or, dare we say it, YouTube, and this leads to more and more people wearing that uncomfortable and entirely unwanted badge of anxiety disorder sufferer. This overdiagnosis has in recent times led to an unnecessary medicalization of normal emotional experiences and added further fuel to our anxiety issues. And before you jump into the comments and say, but being diagnosed is the first step towards getting treatment, no, it isn't. The first step towards getting past an anxiety issue should start long before and exist aside from any diagnosis. Since when do we have to be diagnosed with a disorder before we start to look after our mental health? But hey, let's talk about what we can actually do in the face of all the challenges we've discussed to make sure our anxiety levels don't get out of hand. And if they already have, how we get them back under control. But before we continue, I want to give a quick shout out to our channel members. A big thank you for your ongoing support that ultimately helps keep this channel running and allows me to create more content like this. If you're interested in becoming a member and gaining access to exclusive perks, click the link in the description below. So let's talk about solutions. The first thing to note here is that if this video has taught you one thing, it should be that if you're currently dealing with high levels of anxiety, you are not a member of some malfunctioning minority. What's actually happening is that you are a healthy, fully functioning human being that, like many other millions of people on the planet, is currently, for good reason, struggling. So what's the solution? Well, it all starts with a shift in perspective. By acknowledging anxiety as a natural response to stresses in our lives, we can reduce the stigma we place on ourselves when feeling anxious and empower ourselves to cope more effectively. Rather than pathologizing every anxious thought or feeling, we can learn to embrace them as part of the human experience. This means allowing ourselves to feel anxious without immediately questioning our mental health or rushing to Google to find a diagnosis. Yes, we're going to feel anxious about many things in our life, and that's because there are many things that present as important to us. But if we accept these feelings as natural and not maladaptive, even when they seem excessive, then we stop piling on that second fear, the fear of disorder, because that's the fear that ultimately perpetuates all chronic high levels of anxiety. And how do I know that you, the person watching this video, is currently dealing with second fear? Because if you weren't, then you wouldn't be watching videos about how to deal with anxiety. You're here because for all the things in your life you might be anxious about, the thing you're now most anxious about is how anxious you feel. So yes, I could tell you to take time away from social media and stop Googling symptoms of anxiety, but ultimately the way you reduce anxiety is by accepting that in the face of all the millions of pieces of data and the copious amounts of misinformation being thrown at you on a daily basis, feeling anxious about all of that is natural and healthy. Don't make the mistake of living a hugely overstimulating existence only to conclude that being anxious in the face of that must mean there's something wrong with you. That would be like someone you love dying and then someone telling you that if you feel too sad about that, that means you have some kind of mental disorder. Yes, there are ways of managing our stresses to minimize anxiety levels, and I'll link to a video I've made about that at the end. But all in all, always remember that feeling anxious is natural. The fact that more and more people are feeling highly anxious these days is not a sign of some sweeping mental health epidemic. It's a sign of certain elements of the way we live being more conducive to high anxiety than they used to be. But that's it for this one. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below. Always remember to be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.